Should you be hyped for Dandadan? In April 2021, Dandadan began serialization in the Shonen Jump digital counterpart, Jump Plus. And with the first volume being full of the occult, aliens, gilfs, many sex crimes, it's no wonder that the series quickly gained notoriety. And after looking into the author's history, it's no wonder that the series is so fucking weird. Before the creation of Dandadan, author Yukinobu Tatsu was an assistant to the renowned Tatsuki Fujimoto of Chainsaw Man fame. He worked as an assistant on Fujimoto's first series, Fire Punch, which is full of that classic Fujimoto weirdness. He would then continue working with Fujimoto on Chainsaw Man, but then would eventually join up with Yuji Kaku, the author of Hell's Paradise, to help him bring the series to an end as an assistant. And finally, when his duties as an assistant came to an end, he decided to start working on his own series, Dandadan. Unlike Fujimoto, who you could argue we know a little bit too much about, not much is really known about Yukinobu Tatsu. In spite of this, the manga's still been able to achieve a high level of success, winning numerous awards, cultivating its own beloved fanbase, and getting over 360 million views on Jump Plus by November 2023. And as someone who has read the first volume, I can confirm the series does live up to the hype. But will the anime be able to do the same? The task of animating the series has been given to the studio Science Saru. Now, if you're not massively into anime or anime production, then there's a good chance you haven't really heard about them, especially not until recently at least. This is because they've been known for being quite artsy ever since they were founded, and this is probably further heightened by the fact that Science Saru is quite a relatively new studio, considering they were founded in February 2013, co-founded by Eun Choi, sorry I butchered that, and Misaki Uwasa. Although the studio is quite young, they have actually produced some quite mainstream hits, such as Devilman Crybaby, Keep Your Hands Off Isaacan, and quite recently the Scott Pilgrim anime. And anyone who is familiar with these works will tell you that they're high quality. But this is Science Saru's first time ever animating a Jump property, which are renowned for being resource heavy, thanks to their fights and the large audiences that they bring in. So will Science Saru be able to handle it? Well, when initially founded, Uwasa had a philosophy where he liked to work in small teams, and seeing that he was the co-founder of his studio, the studio was then made to share the same philosophy. And to maximise the potential of this idea, the studio ended up developing a technique called digitally assisted animation. This consists about building around Flash as a tool to easily create smooth between keys in place. Just to be on the safe side to anyone who's watching this that doesn't know much about anime production, I'm going to explain the in-betweening stage quickly, since I know you're just too lazy to Google it yourself. The in-betweening stage occurs after the keyframes for a cut have been drawn. And this is because these drawings are put in between the keyframes to make the motion more smooth. A lot of studios have departments dedicated to the in-betweening process. The in-betweening process is actually where a lot of animators who have risen through the ranks in the traditional sense began their careers. For example, Yuasa began his career as an in-between animator on the show Hitari Ryoko. Now back to the digitally assisted pipeline. This doesn't completely remove the in-betweening stage, but it does dramatically change it. Because of this, it lets the studio focus on more in-house crews, rather than them having to scramble around to get a large team ready for a typical production. This is because it's common for different stages of an anime production to be handled by entirely different studios, such as in-betweening and compositing. By doing most of the work in-house, it makes communication much easier, and this makes the work much closer to the director's original vision. The pipeline developed at Science Saru allows the employees to have a much healthier work-life balance. And then it didn't. This is because the work-life balance would eventually be ruined. And that's because Studio Science Saru faced problems that the entire anime industry is facing, which is overproduction and overwork. Although in recent times, the anime industry has absolutely exploded in not only popularity, but also in profits. Most of these profits have stayed at the top of the chain, which leads to studios and animators making barely enough to survive. Because of this, studios are then incentivized to take on more work that they can actually handle, putting the burden on their animators, just so that they can survive and stay afloat. The production team is then overworked, and they're still paid through a method that was used in the 60s by Osamu Tezuka. And this eventually led to Science Saru abusing the healthy work-life balance, instead using that to make more shows. We know this thanks to an interview done by Joanne Chung in 2021 for Anime News Network, which is actually quite a rarity in the anime industry, since we don't normally get to hear about the insides of studios from animators themselves, unless the situation is really bad and you got animators saying they want to kill themselves, like that one time in Studio Mappa. But Science Saru is also different in this regard to other anime studios as well, because a lot of their employees are actually from overseas. This can create quite a bit of tension, as Western animators are just used to better working conditions and better pay, largely thanks to unions. Support the unions. In the interview, she described the little pay and the insurmountable pressure she would face, as all of the staff were overworked, and that the schedule was so tight that they wouldn't even be allowed time to rest. At the time, Science Saru only had about 40 to 50 members of staff, and with the studio working on 2 single-season productions, a feature-length film, and working on the Star Wars Visions project, it's clear that there would be some major overworking. And even though Science Saru is one of the better anime studios actually paying their animators a wage, they are still not immune to spreading themselves too thin and eventually overworking their staff. And unfortunately, when she brought this up to a supervisor and the company CEO, they replied compassionately, but they were unable to change anything practical. This then gets much worse, as when the interview was released, the CEO stated that they had the ability to sue anyone who speaks out. And that probably isn't the best response when you're called out by your staff for your poor working conditions. In the end, it doesn't seem like anyone got sued, and in this situation the best we can do is give Science Saru the benefit of the doubt, and just hope that this was a knee-jerk reaction during a time that was very transitional for them, as it was very awkward at the time, seeing as Yuasa decided to step down as CEO, and we can only hope that the studio has been able to find their footing again and try to take on a much healthier schedule. The studio's last big project was in 2023, and was actually the only thing they released that year. This year they do have 2 large projects, one being the Dandadan anime and the other being a feature-length film. The schedule already seems far more healthier compared to 2022. But in the end, we'll never know the full details of what's happening in the background. For all we know, they could be doing One Piece 3, and they could be slaving away on 1,000 episodes. One Piece 3! Well, hopefully it means that the staff have been given enough time to produce a work that reflects their current skills. And just looking at the small staff list that's available so far already has me excited for the amount of talent that's working on this show. Although this is Fuga Yamashiro's first time working in a directorial role, I believe that he'll be able to do great, seeing as he's worked with plenty of other incredible directors in the past, such as Yuasa, Shingo Natsume, and Naoko Yamada. Dandadan seems like it'll be the perfect project to let a young, fresh director to be creatively free. You can already see how unique the show's going to look from the couple trailers that have been released so far. And from what I've seen, it really reminds me of Natsume's approach to direction, where you just let the animators go wild. You can also see in the trailer creative shots and use of colour, and I imagine that Dandadan's probably going to be one of the most creative looking shows of this year. Of course, the trailers are essentially highlight reels of what the show could look like, and it doesn't determine the quality of the whole show, just what the highs could be like. From what they've shown us so far, could easily be the best shots that they have, so don't get your hopes up thinking that the entire show is going to look like that. But the staff does have a lot of veterans working on it. We have Naoyuki Onda, a veteran animator in the character design role. You might think it's strange having an animator in the character design role, but it's actually industry standard. And this is because, well, the character designs are for anime, not for like just drawing. So having an animator in that position is like the only people who could like be in that position, as they understand the fundamentals of animation and like what parts of characters are easy to draw and such like that. Yoshimichi Kamada, another industry veteran, is as the creature and alien designer, which is great, because from what I've seen, Dandadan has some crazy alien designs, and I mean crazy. Junichi Higashi has been credited as the art director. Once again, another veteran who's also worked in the industry since the 80s. He's worked on shows like Dragon Ball, Cowboy Bebop. One of his most recent notable works is Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, which was absolutely beautiful. And it looks like the composing is going to be able to keep up with the rest of the talent, seeing as we have Kazuto Izumita as the director of photography, who's worked on series such as Osama Ranking, Skip to Loafer and Great Pretender, which all had phenomenal animation, especially Osama Ranking, which had phenomenal animation and direction. I am thinking of the Goso episode, by the way. Boy, that guy turns me on. With this being Science Sara's first Shonen Jump IP, the writing is going to be really important to make sure that the pacing is correct. And it looks like they've gone to the right place, seeing as they have Hiroshi Seiko, who's responsible for the series composition. He's worked on other Shonen Jump properties like Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, but has also worked on Attack on Titan. So this series is probably going to be in safe hands. But if it isn't, if everything goes horribly wrong, because they've had like 2 months to make Dandadan, because it's 2 codes as well, so that's a lot of production. At least we'll be okay in the music department, because we have Kensuke Ushio, and from the trailers alone, I know this is going to be one of the best soundtracks of the year. The 2 songs that I've heard, or I think it was 3 maybe in the trailers, all bangers. In the end, we can only stay patient and keep expectations tempered. And hey, even if the show ends up more like a Hell's Paradise and less like a Chainsaw Man, at least the show's writing will probably still be good, hopefully. Fuck, it's not enough.